Hello, everyone. Welcome to Exceptionality, Chapter 7, Objective 4 of Including Students with Special Needs. Today's objective: describe the social and emotional characteristics and needs of students with learning, behavioral, and mild intellectual disabilities, and how can you differentiate instruction for them using the include strategy. As an introduction, I wanted to talk about students with disabilities struggle with a variety of emotional needs, many of which can be as great an impediment to their progress as their disability, although often it is caused by their disability. Some of these behaviors are common behaviors, but exhibited in a way so as to create disruption or possibly an unsafe environment for other students, especially if students become belligerent or want to engage in fisticuffs. Um, let's take a look at interpersonal skills first. This is often has to do with an inability to learn from social situations. They may not be able to read social cues. There might be impulsivity, as in they know the right thing to do, but when the time hits, they have an impulse to do something different, and that's what they do. Or just some nervousness from when the time comes to do what is needed. They may have experienced previous efforts that have gone unrecognized. So, better to act out, get some attention than no attention. And they may lack confidence even if the skills are known. And this confidence is often tied up in a self esteem issue, and we'll look at that also in a moment. The inability to learn from social situations and several of these others can be caused by multiple things. One may simply be they do not have examples at home, or perhaps they have been isolated in special education classrooms for a long time and they just haven't been involved. I believe this is one of the largest reasons why we want to include our students in the general population in a school. Some accommodations around interpersonal skills. We could do social skills training, which would be direct instruction about social skills, how to manage friendships and relationships. Um, we would want to make sure that we give examples in a variety of settings, as social skills are often not generalized by students. Um, give students opportunities to practice with each other to maintain those skills. All of this to say, social skills training, social skills aren't always automatically absorbed. Direct instruction could happen whole group because sometimes kids need whole group instruction in social skills, and sometimes it might just be with that one student. Have them sit at a desk with you for 10 minutes, every couple days and until they kind of can work through what they might want to do. Sometimes they haven't thought about it and they haven't anybody to help guide them through it either. We may want to engage in self-control training, especially kids who are working through EBD issues. This might be a situation where we're going to want to go and work with our special education teacher to get some tips that we might be able to use in class. They need to learn to ignore when they're being teased. A kid who explodes predictably every time is eventually going to get teased by somebody. And of course, we'll need to probably do some social skills training with the person who's doing the teasing. But still, and maybe they need to learn to walk away, which is kind of a type of ignoring, but it's removing yourself from the situation when it is possible. And I put Yoda bin because self-control, and I would use that I actually would use that as an illustration with kids of that's what self-control can look like. Is there's times for action and there's times to not act and walk away. Personal and psychological adjustment that might need to take place with some students. Students with disabilities often have a poor self-image. This is because they have spent years with a label of a certain disability. They may feel like they're never going to get it right. They may have come to a point of learned helplessness. This means I am not going to even try because I'm not going to succeed anyway. So I'm just helpless, and here I am. And so they stop trying to learn something new or do something different. There might be motivational concerns. It might look like there's laziness there when it's really just linked back to the learned helplessness or the self-image of, if I can't do it anyway, then why try? Um, I'd rather go over and do this thing that I know I can succeed at versus what you're asking me to do. And depression, not necessarily clinical depression, but still, um, a still can be fairly debilitating and fairly common with kids who are suffering from poor self-image. What can we do for these kids? Well, we could do some attribution training. Attribution training is learning to attribute failure to the right thing. In this case, it would be lack of effort and not lack of ability. Um, we have to, of course, have a relationship with our students so they understand that we're not going to try to make them fail. And I think most kids get that. But once in a while, I do run into kids who feel like they're being set up for failure. But we want them to at least put out the effort. If they're willing to put forth the effort and they don't succeed, that's okay. We'll figure it out and move ahead and try again. But this is the greatest help for that learned helplessness, to try to get past that. We may need to give our students some help with their self-image. A quick 5 things that might help with this. Set reasonable goals, goals that can be reached, preferably if needed, goals that can be reached to reach a larger goal. So most successful people look at the task that they need to accomplish and they break it up into pieces that can be achieved. How do you eat an elephant? One step at a time. Provide specific feedback contingent on student behavior. If you do this behavior, then you're going to get good feedback and positive feedback. You accomplished what you needed to do. That was great. And we want to be very specific, not just, hey, great job, but Johnny, I noticed that you tried really hard to complete your math paper, and that really tells me a great deal about your character. That's the kind of thing we want. Give students responsibility in class. Teach students to reinforce themselves. That is to say, learn how to give yourself the boost that you need. And say, no, I'm good at this and this, and I'm not stupid. And I may have a disability, but I can work through it and work with it to get where I need to be. And give students a chance to show their strengths. We're going to look at an example of that in just a moment. So a little refresher as we look at how to use include to work with some of these social and behavioral issues. Identify, note student learning strengths and needs, check for potential areas of success, look for problem areas, use information gathered to brainstorm instructional adaptations, decide what to use, which is differentiate, and evaluate student progress. Let's take a look here. Drew up a little chart, a couple of examples out of the chapter. Identify classroom demands, that's the I. Note student needs and strengths, that's our N. Check for potential successes and look for potential problems, that's our C and L. And our differentiate is the we're skipping brainstorm, and this is the way that in chapter, so I'm just rolling with that. But it works. For example, the classroom demand is that students are seated in clusters of 4. I'm not sure if that means they're facing each other or 4 desks facing forward, but at any rate, they are in clusters of 4. The students' strengths are they have good vocabulary skills, but they do have difficulty staying on task and attending to those tasks. Potential successes and potential problems. Well, they understand the instruction if they're on task, but they become off task if they're not facing the teacher. So the simple differentiation in this case, change the seating so the student faces the teacher. This is a simple classroom management thing that's easy to do. Here's another student who has the expectation that they be to class on time, but they're not making it. But their strengths are they have good drawing skills, but bad time management. The student uses their artistic talent in class. They like to draw, and they're good at it. But the student is late and frequently does not attend at all. So we use individualized student contract for attendance. When the terms of the contract are upheld, then they get some artistic responsibility in class. Maybe they get to work on changing up a bulletin board. or hanging up a mobile or something like that. Something that can capture their attention and let them do something that can contribute to everybody. A couple more things about accommodations for academic needs. Accommodations are preferable to modifications. Um, Modifications are going to come from an IEP. We're generally not going to use them for behavior. Modifications are for extreme situations where the student cannot complete certain work. Allow the student to use compensatory learning strategies, as in maybe you give them a partially filled out study sheet. Make accommodations to classroom management, grouping, materials, and methods. So put them in a different place, seat them differently, make those contracts. Provide the students with direct instruction on the needed skills independently or in groups. So as we saw before, sitting down the student and teaching them social skills. And so, to conclude, have consistent and predictable classroom management and procedures. Clearly communicate and follow through with behavioral expectations. Engage students in meaningful academic tasks that students can succeed in. These are all major points from the class Theory to Practice with Jeff Fink. If you have Jeff as your advisor, contact him and ask him for some assistance in this area, because you will learn a lot, and he will really help you in dealing with this consistent, predictable classroom management procedures and that communication that goes along with that. Finally, off of page 231, as gen ed teachers, your responsibility as a teacher includes helping all students develop socially. I think that's really valuable and something that we really need to remember as we move forward. Thanks. Good luck with your chapter, and we'll talk soon.